discussed about the basic of what is a dimension. Dimension is a table or an entity which contains reference data. What is reference data? Reference data is important, but it is not used for calculations or measures for a fact. Okay? For example, if you have employee ID 1234 with the number, you have employee name, you have location, and you have job, and who's the manager, when did this employee join. All these details will go into your reference data if you have to divide the employee into dimensions and facts. Now the same employee content will be chunked into fact, which contains only the measurable attributes. When I say measurable attributes, these are the ones which can be calculated. These are usually the numbers. What are the numbers in your employee ID, employee table? Apart from employee ID, which is a unique key, it is your salary and commission, right? Department number is also a number, but that falls under your reference data because it's the reference of which department the employee is part of. Okay, so that's the usual difference between dimension and a fact. Now we cannot rule out dimension data saying it is reference data and we don't need it. Whatever is the importance you have for fact, the numbers, all those come, or the reference to that come from the dimension table only. So that is also as equal as fact table. Okay, now what is a slowly changing dimension? In short, it is called as SCD. The slowly changing dimension is a dimension which changes over a period of time. What does it mean when we say over a period of time? Now let's go back to the Excel here. We'll take the same example of employee ID, employee name, and let's say location. Okay, 1234. And name is, let's say, Sam, and his current location is Texas. Okay, now this employee is hired within my company in Texas on a particular date. Let's call this as hire date 2012080101. Okay, now he joined Texas, his project is finished there after a period of time, and he's moving. Whenever his location changes, if I directly update the location within the same column, okay, within the same column, let's say now he's moved to NC, so I'll just update it to NC. That is called SCD type 1. Let's go back a step behind. Now there are 6 different types of SCDs. Okay, 6 types of SCDs. What are these 6 types? Of course, it is again numbered as type 1, type 2, and type 3. But how many do we usually use in any of the real-time data warehouse scenarios? Now, we cannot rule out anything within that, but we can say the first 3, the type 1, type 2, and type 3 are the ones which are usually used. 4, 5, and 6 are also required or used based on your requirement. When I say requirement, how you want to treat the data, how you want to store it within your system. Okay, that is type 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, and 6 are the rest of the ones. Okay, now there are some, if you just search on Google, if you look out for various other types, there will be some combinations. Okay, when we say combinations, it's a combination of let's say type 1, 2, and 3 together within a single dimension, and or a combination of type 2 and type 6 together, and things like that. Okay, you might also get questions within your interviews asking what is a hybrid slowly changing dimension. Okay, it's usually a type 6 one. It's a combination of 1, 2, and 3 together, which are maintained in a single dimension. Now you can always ask, how is that maintained in a single dimension? It's the design of the dimension which will serve the purpose of all 3 of the types. Okay, So let's stick to type 1, 2, and 3 for now, because these usually suffice for most of the data warehouse requirements until unless you have some critical or high level data modeling which is done, with which you can combine all of this together in a single dimension, where when you're pulling the data from this dimension at the reporting layer, you pull that as part of a multi-dimensional reference data pool. Okay. Coming back to the example, I have SAD type 1, which is always current data, okay, immaterial of how many ever times this guy Sam changes his job location. It will always store the latest location. Okay. Now, after 2 years, let's say every year my company has a practice saying, I want a report to be generated on how much salary and how much commission I am paying for a particular employee on annual basis. Okay. Is it matching with the offer which I have already given him? Now, when you maintain the current setup, let's say the date when he joined, he's in Texas. Now, Texas has its own tax rules, its own deductions, and whatever benefits the employee gets as part of the government rules within Texas, state rules within Texas. Now, NC will have its own rules. Now, let's say when the report was generated for the year 2012, we got 100 here, and for the year 2013, we got 200 here. Now, obviously, if I'm looking at the data, I did not give any increment to Sam. Why is it 100 there? Why is it 200 here? Okay, if I have only the current data, what will I look at? I don't know if Sam has worked in Texas earlier, because as a business analyst, I should not be aware where employees are working or at what location they are right now, right? So I'll just look at NC and figure out 200 is very high. 200 is little high than what he should be paid for. Why is he being paid for 200? Okay, and the annual income last year was only 100. Why was it doubled this year? Was there any increment given? All these sort of questions come up. Then the HR will verify that, come back to the business and say, no, last year he was in Texas. Texas has higher percentage of taxes. That's the reason he got less. But NC has lesser percentage of taxes, and that's the reason he's earning more. Okay. Now, that can be solved like this, maintaining all the historical information, which is again type 2. Okay, let's pull the same record here. Okay, now in type 2, what will he have? We are saying historical information, which means we should also have, actually this should be the same thing. It's a higher date. Higher date would not change, right? So I'll put the first record, Control D. Okay. Actually, we don't need it here, but let's keep it there. Now he has Texas and NC. Now, again, let's go back to the tax percentages. We have 100 here. We have 200 here, right? From what date to what date is he available there? So we need to add two attributes, start date, end date, or from date to to date, whichever you would like, or whichever is designed in the data model. Okay, so let's say it is 2012. From the day he joined in Texas, and he has worked here for 6 months, 0701. Okay, and when we asked him to move from Texas to NC, his end date will become the start date of the next record or the next location, and the current end date will be empty. Now let's say we asked him to go to another project which is there in, let's say, California. Okay, then his end date will be, let's say, this month, 03/08/20. Now this end date will become the current start date. Okay, hard date will still stay the same, and this will be blank. So at any given point of time, wherever there is a null in your end date, that is the latest record. Okay, now Dimension table always has a key. If you notice, I'm inserting the employee ID 3 times. Will I not get a unique constraint there? I will. So how do we avoid that? Wherever you have a situation like this where you have multiple entries to be maintained for a same key, we use something called as surrogate key. What is a surrogate key? Surrogate key is nothing but a artificial primary key. It is not a natural key. What is a natural key here? Employee ID, because the employee should have an ID with which he will be identified, right? And what is a surrogate ID? Surrogate key or surrogate ID is another unique number, which is a running sequence number, which can be generated from our sequence generator transformation within Informatica or any of the methodologies which we can use. And this will just generate a unique number every time there is a record which is inserted. And this surrogate key will become the primary key of this dimension table, which will maintain each of the records as your unique record. Okay, so what are the two options you have now? The two options which you have is to find the latest record, to get the max of the surrogate key, or to find the null of employee date. Okay, with that you can find out what is the current location of the employee. Now if you want to see the whole history of employee Sam, then you have to write a query on the dimension table with employee ID in the where condition, ordered by start date or end date. Then you can see the whole list of locations which he has already been to. Okay, so this is historical maintenance. Now, is this the only option? Is this the only way with which we can do it? No, you have a couple of other options, which is flagging and maintaining the number. Now let's talk about flagging first, then we'll go to the number. So I'll just move aside and say dates. Let me copy the whole thing. Control C, and this is flag. So wherever I have a flag, I'll not have the start date and end date. I'll just have a current flag, and here I'll have either the text attribute or the Boolean attribute 0, 0, 1. Either of these, anything would work. Okay, so how do you find the latest current location? It is wherever your current flag is white. Okay, that's flagging. That's one of the other options. Now the same thing when you go with versioning, it's just like the surrogate key. Versions, let's call this versions, and you'll have 1, 2, 3. So this keeps on going. Okay, if he has moved 10 different locations, he'll have the number 10 as the latest. So whichever is the latest version, that's the current location of that particular employee. Okay, out of all these three, the best and the effective one is the start date and end date, because you're getting an additional information here. It is more clear on when he has started it, when he has ended it. If you go back to the example of taxing 100, 200, this is more appropriate compared to current flag and versioning, because if you do not have the date, then all you can see is the hire date, with which we will not know how many number of months, how many number of years he has worked on a single location, and if that taxing rules or the payment which he has got from the company is the right one or not. So this is the effective methodology. Okay, now let's talk about type 3. Type 3 is nothing but current minus 1. What does that mean? He'll have, at any given point of time, there will be only 2 entries. Okay, we should also have surrogate key here because we are maintaining 2 entries. So at any given point of time, you'll have only 2 entries for that particular record. Okay, now let's go back to the first point. He joined in Texas. Now we can still maintain start date and end date here or the versions because we still have to find out which is his current location. So we cannot let go of these, either of the current flag or the versions. Okay. So he's joined in Texas, later he moved to NC. So that becomes 2 records. Now let's say he recently moved to California, then this will be shifted. All this record will be gone and you'll have a new entry here and this will be the current one. So in this dimension for a particular employee, there will always be only 2 entries, which is the current and the most recent one. Okay, let's say he moved again. So 434 Sam, and here it is, let's say CH, and obviously the hire date will be the same, some date. Let's call this as 0, Control C, Control V, 01. So this will be the same here, and this will be the start date. So when the new location adds, the top one goes away. So it will be only 2. Surrogate key is the primary key here. Okay, so this do not change. This will always be a new sequence number. Now usually we are saying we do not delete any data from our data warehouses, right? We say that. By saying that, it doesn't mean we keep everything there. We have some strategies based on the project, based on the data which the business wants. They keep it for a week, they keep it for a quarter, they keep it for 6 months, or they archive it onto their tape drives on a regular basis. Okay. Now, if you want a combination, what you can do is you can maintain type 2 with the start date and end date, also have the flags. Okay. In the flags, you can have Y enabled only for the last 2, and all the rest of the ones will be N. So what are we doing here? We are maintaining type 3 and type 2 together. For example, if I put this here, for the last 2 entries, it will be Y's, and anything before that will be an N. It is a combination of type 2 and type 3. Okay, so this is the whole set about slowly changing dimension. What are dimensions? Dimensions are reference data where you have the data related as detailed as possible to an employee, to a customer, to a product, to a supplier, anything which we can contain the data. Okay, all the measurable attributes will stick or stay to your fact table. The design, when the data design or the data model is made, we need to define what attributes come into the reference data and what attributes go into the fact table. It is the job of the data modeler to discuss that with the business and divide these attributes accordingly into the dimensions and to the fact. Okay, once they do that, after the physical model is created, we start pulling the data into it. And if you want to maintain the dimensional data in a specific order, which is, these are all situations, right? Now let's say immaterial of where the employee has joined, he should be working in only the location which he is hired. If you have a policy like that, type 2 and type 3 are ruled out. We don't even have to maintain them. But with the current situation, employees would be asked to travel around locations to fulfill the jobs and the company's requirements, right? So type 2 comes into picture, where you'll have the start date and end date. And as we are repeating the same customer key or the employee ID here, to have that uniqueness placed, we are using a surrogate key. Now, surrogate key is not the name of the attribute. There'll be some key to that, usually the table key, let's say dim key or employee key or whatever name. Surrogate key is the term which we give to it. What is the definition of the surrogate key? Surrogate key is an artificial key which is not unique in nature, okay, by itself. I'll rephrase that. Employee ID is a natural primary key where it is identified by the employee ID, okay, which is unique again. Surrogate key is a running sequence number which usually do not have any meaning other than terming or tagging a record as unique, okay. So within type 2 you have three varieties: start date and end date, current flag, and version. Start date and end date will give you more clear picture of when the employee has started at a location and when he has ended it, okay. Current flag will just give you the information of what is the current location of the employee along with all the locations. So whatever is the current location, that will be flagged as Y, rest all of them will be flagged as N. Versions, you'll have again a running sequence number which is incremental, so whichever is the max number, that will be your latest record. All the ones below or less than that number are your historical records. That's type 2. Type 3